You guys seem to really enjoy the first episode in our tier list series, so we're going to do another one. Last time we ranked the best Wonderkid strikers in FM23, and today we move on to wide players. That's both left-sided players and right-sided. I've picked the top 20 from the FM Scout Wonderkid list, and we'll be ranking them today based on a few different categories. But of course, this really comes to life when you guys let us know your opinions in the comments. Who do you think I've put in the wrong place? Who would you have moved higher? All of that stuff I want to know in the comments down below. And don't forget, if you do enjoy this series and you want to see more, to smash the like button for us to let us know you enjoy it, and to subscribe to the channel. A final side note before we start as well, my name's Jake, and if you want to check out any Let's Play style content for Football Manager, you can find my channel linked in the description. Any support over there is massively appreciated, but let's get right into it, shall we? We have got here 20 different wide players and 5 different categories. First, we've got the GOAT. That will be for one single player from this list, the one that I deem to be the best, because of course this is all my own opinion. Then you've got the best of the rest, which will be reserved for the players that just miss out on that GOAT status but are in contention for it. Pretty good is for the other players that make decent signings but aren't going to blow your socks off and aren't necessarily must signs in all of your saves. Hype's gone are the players that maybe have already had their big move and become slightly unavailable because of that, or the guys that just aren't that appealing anymore. My ranking isn't just based on individual talent, it's everything from price point to availability to how good they can be in your save, whether you can get them first season or have to wait until your 5th season to be able to buy them. I'm considering all of it. And then we've got unusable. That's for the players that are either not very good, maybe they're far too expensive, or have a horrible injury record. Anything like that will be considered. And to let you know, we heard you in the first episode, all of you said you couldn't understand the pronunciations of these players' names. Don't worry, I'll put a list of them in order in the description down below, so if you want to find them, you can go down there and take a look. But we're going to go from back to front to start off with, and our first player is Watford's Yaser Asprilla. Now, he's someone that I've had a little bit of experience with, not too much in FM23, but Watford have signed him with the idea of him being a great player for them in the future, and there's a good chance of him doing just that. Whether he'll be good enough to play for, say, a top 6 Premier League side or a really strong European club all depends on the kind of development that he gets, but he is on the cheaper side compared to some of these players, and he has some decent attributes, although I wouldn't say he's a must-sign player. So for now, he's going to go in the pretty good section. He's alright, just nothing too special. Next, we've got Naci Unuvar of Ajax, who was once deemed one of the best prospects in world football and in Football Manager terms, and whilst he does still have a very good potential, I think his potential range is 140 to 170, and he has some nice starting attributes. At this point, he's getting close to being 20 or so, hasn't quite cut it at Ajax, and now he's on loan at Turkey. I just think there's so many better options out there now. He's not the player he once was in my eyes, and for that reason, I'm going to put him in the Hype's Gone section. Again, some of you might have had great success with some of these people, but overall, I just don't think he is one of the better options in this list in terms of who is a must-buy in FM23. Next, we've got Doak, who we did a Wonderkid to Superstar episode on. A very good player who starts off really young and can be moulded into any kind of role, really. But particularly as someone that's going to cut in and try and score from out wide, he is very good. But the Scotsman has only just signed for Liverpool. His price point does come pretty high, and he needs a lot of development to actually become a usable player at the highest of levels. Someone like Asprilla comes along with a bit more ability right from the off. That's of course because he's older, but considering they're a similar price point, for me, I'll put Asprilla higher, and Doak can just sit in that pretty good section. Harvey Elliot for me is an easy one. I'm putting him straight in unusable. Nothing wrong with his talent whatsoever. A very talented player with one of the best potential ratings in FM23. However, he starts off at Liverpool. Chances are he'll be a player in their first team, and when I tried to have a look before this video to see how much he actually cost, because I've never really looked into it, we were Manchester City, but Liverpool asked us for over £130 million, and I just don't think that's viable. Maybe in season 4 or 5 he gets transfer listed, you might be able to get him. Obviously, all of that is up in the air and can only happen by chance, so for that reason, I'm going to put him in the unusable section. Our next player is the uber-talented Yeremi Pino of Villarreal. I played as Villarreal on Football Manager last year, and after a couple of years and helping us in the Champions League, we eventually sold him for 120 million to Manchester City. He is one of the best players options that you can get in terms of a youngster who has great current ability as well. He'll be a regular for his national team. He will play for one of the biggest clubs in the world, but your big issue is right from the off, he's wanted by those big clubs, your Manchester Uniteds, your Real Madrids, for 40 to 50 million. If you're able to pay that money, he's definitely worth getting, but because of that, I'm going to put him in the hype's gone section. He's not completely unattainable, that he has to go in unusable, but he is very expensive. He is a premium option. But as Football Manager players, I know a lot of us aren't managing those top 6 clubs in world football, and he's just not really a ready-made option for any of those teams, whereas some of these other guys certainly could be. So for that reason, Yeremi Pino, it hurts me to say it, but I'm going to put him in the hype's gone section. It just seems like he's not that must-sign player that he used to be. Next is another fairly easy one for me. We're starting off with all the bad ones, it seems. Not that Bakayo Saka is bad by any stretch. He is a mercurial talent, fantastic player for Arsenal, but again, another one that will command such a high fee that he has to go in the unusable section. Unless you're Real Madrid or Man City, you probably have no chance of getting Bakayo Saka. Again, if you're going to say, oh, I signed him for Wrexham in my 10th year in my save, fair enough, but of course that's completely dependent on the circumstances of your save, so I'm not going to base his rating off of that. But Bakayo Saka is an unusable Wonderkid in FM23, and now we move on to someone where my bias might come into play a little bit. It's Michael Olise, who of course plays for Crystal Palace and is fairly expensive. Again, he is fairly pricey, and it might seem crazy that I'm going to put him in best of the rest because he will cost 40 to 50 million, and I use these exact reasons to counteract why you shouldn't get Yeremi Pino. But the thing with Michael Olise is, if you wait just over a season or so, there's a very good chance Crystal Palace get relegated, and he is someone you can get on a cut price fee. I've also used him in the Benfica rebuild that you can find on my channel, linked in the description, and he took our side to, I mean, you have to watch the video, but he just elevated our side to another level, and we had one of the best seasons I've ever seen in Football Manager, and he was a huge part of why we did that. So for me, best of the rest. You guys might think he's a bit more down here, depending on who you're managing, but in terms of talent, at such a young age, who can grow into a guaranteed superstar, Michael Olise has to be up there for me. Okay, we're slowly making our way through this list, and I've just noticed someone is missing. I thought I counted 20. It seems I've only got 19 images here, but the player that's missing I'll talk about now. It's Liel Abada of Celtic, an Israeli wide player who has a fixed potential rating, is older than some of these other players, but is fairly affordable, and if it was me, I'd have him in the pretty good section. But we'll move on from him for now and move on to Benfica youngster Joao Rego. Now, he can be signed for a very, very small fee usually of under £1 million. It might be slightly different in your save, but he is a player with a lot of talent. My only issue is I don't think he's a complete must-buy because, much like Ben Doak, he doesn't start off looking very great and needs a lot of time to actually get up to speed to be able to play at a decent level. Of course, that's going to be the case with some of these younger players, but there are players of that age group who are better in my eyes, and for that reason, Joao Rego is just another pretty good Wonderkid in this year's FM. Next, we have Brazilian wide player Kayky of Manchester City, who they signed last year, I want to say, and he's just part of the City group teams now where he's being loaned around, and eventually you'll probably be able to sign him in FM a few years in once Manchester City decide he's not good enough, but for that reason, I'm just going to put him in hype's gone. Yes, he is a player that you could potentially sign, but minimum you're going to have to wait a year. After that, he might cost a fair bit, and you could have put that money into someone else in the meantime. So because he's made that move to City already, he is in the hype's gone section, but not technically unusable yet. Next, we have Borussia Dortmund's USA international Giovanni Reyna, who used to be a good option in FM. I'm just not sure about him anymore. If I remember right, he might have had a few injury problems as well. There's just better options in his age group, and whilst he does have good potential, for me, another one that goes right in to that hype's gone section. He's not the kind of player that I look to sign anymore. Now though, we're moving on to some of my favourites. I can see we're getting close to them, but I think we'll leave those until a little bit later. Now though, let's move on to this player here, David Kalokoh, who for me sits in the pretty good section. Another decent wide player who needs a lot of time to develop to be useful, but he can be a great inside forward on your save with a little bit of development, but for now, there's nothing that sets him apart from the rest for me, so he's going in the pretty good section. We then have another good Benfica youth prospect. It's Diego Moreira, who is a little bit older than Joao Rego, who we looked at earlier, but he does have a lot more ability, and for me in my saves, I usually see him become a better player than Joao Rego does. Again, nothing really setting him apart too much from some of these other players, so he's just a good Wonderkid option if you wanted him. But now we're starting to narrow it down into the best of the rest and our GOAT. But first, let's get rid of Ansu Fati, who for me, hype's gone, unusable. I would say his valuation isn't crazy at 30 to 50 million, but to be able to sign him from Barcelona, it's going to be high wages. He's also pretty injury prone as well, and I just feel like he's got to be in the unusable section based on the reasons we've given for some of the others. Definitely a great player though if you can get him into your team, so don't write him off, but for me, he's just not a Wonderkid that I'll even try to use anymore. And we're now in to our final 6. Let's do Nico Williams next, the final really expensive player in this list. Now he, for me, it will be... do I say hype's gone? I feel like he's in the pretty good section. He is quite expensive, but not as much as some of these other players in this section here, and he still has a lot of ability and room to grow. The reason I'm not putting him up too much higher is because you will have to compete with some of the best clubs in world football, and it's still going to be tens of millions of pounds to sign him, so I don't think he quite makes it into a must-sign player, but for right now, he's going to go in the pretty good section. And you know what? He can actually be the best in that area. And our final players now are Andreas Schelderup, Tobias Gullikson, Angelo, Roony Bardghji, and Alberto Moleiro. Let's start with Roony Bardghji, the Swedish wide player who plays for FC Copenhagen out in Denmark. 16 years of age, he already has loads of ability and shouldn't cost you anywhere above 10 million. For me, he's a better option than Olise. He's more available than Olise, and whilst he might not be as talented, I just think in terms of his value and how quick you can get him and make him part of your first team, to be that good at 16, he has to be one of the best of the rest, but I don't think he quite makes it into the GOAT category, and the same has to be said for me for Alberto Moleiro, and this will come as a shock to some, but I actually prefer him to Roony Bardghji. He plays for Las Palmas out in Spain, and usually again he'll come anywhere under that £10 million price point. He'll easily become one of the most technical players in world football once fully developed, and he's just such a great option to have. If you haven't checked him out already, make sure you do. In the episode on strikers, I did pick one player from the list that I think you should check out if you haven't already, and for me, Alberto Moleiro would be one. I imagine he's going to get a big move to one of the top clubs in Spain soon, so use him whilst you can. Next we have Santos' Brazilian winger Angelo, who was brilliant last year. He's still very good, but maybe not as good as he once was. He's going to cost you under £10 million yet again. A great left foot to cut in on from that right hand side. A brilliant inverted winger. For me, because Roony Bardghji is 1 year younger, I'm going to put Angelo below him, but he is definitely still one of the best you can get. And now we have Tobias Gullikson and Andreas Schelderup. Tobias is a fantastic, versatile, talented Wonderkid who plays for Stromgodset, if I remember right. Again, I'll put his name in the description if the way I pronounce it doesn't make sense to you, but he is a phenomenal player. Even though he's had the top of his head cut off in this image, you should definitely check him out because he usually costs around £2 to £3 million, which is an absolute bargain for the player you get. Now, would he be in GOAT purely because of his price? On a lot of occasions, I would actually say so, because his price is so cheap. Because he's not at the world's best club, there's a good chance you can attract him to your side. However, for me, I'm going to put him below Roony Bardghji in the best of the rest, purely because we have to consider the player's actual talent and their ceiling as well. And for that reason, I've got to go for Andreas Schelderup as the GOAT. It was probably pretty obvious coming into this one. He is a fantastic player, playing for Nordsjælland out on that left-hand side. The Norwegian is absolutely fantastic, and when the winter update comes out for Football Manager, he will be a Benfica player that you'll be unable to sign. But in terms of someone who has bags of talent, comes pretty cheap, is easy to attract, and near enough always goes on to be one of the best in the world, Andreas Schelderup has to be the man. Let me know what you think of my final rankings in the comments down below. Do you think I got any of these wrong? I think there'll be a big chunk of you that might have something to say about the players I've got in unusable and hype's gone. But overall, I'm pretty happy with this tier list. I think we'll do central midfielders next, so like the video if you want to see that. Don't forget to check out my channel, linked in the description too. But most of all, have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Thank you, and goodbye.